Okay, welcome back from your Christmas vacation, 2 weeks off. Starting back into academic math, we have 16 review questions of things you've done this year. The first 3 lines, as we've just talked about before making this video, are your 3 fundamental understanding points of grade 8 math: algebra, integers, and fractions. If you are fluent in those 3 outcomes, there is a strong chance you will do well in the rest of your math through to grade 12. But if you are weak in any of those 3 areas, you must strengthen your understanding if you want to be successful. The first question says -4 plus 4 take away -3. There are 2 operations. There's addition and subtraction. We will do them in the order we see from left to right. -10 plus 4 is -6. I'll write it like that. So 10 negatives and 4 positives make 6 negatives. 6 negatives and 3 positives makes 3 negatives. So your answer for the first question is -3. The second question, it says -4 multiplied by -2. Remember, if a number is next to another number in brackets, the intended operation is multiplication. So -4 times -2 is +8. And +8 plus -10 is -2. Try to make sure you structured your work like that. And the work that I wrote is probably the same work that you wrote as well. Your third question says 6 plus -3 multiplied by +8. So obviously you have to do your multiplication first. -3 times +8 is -24. And 6 plus -24, if I have 24 negatives combined with 6 positives, I'll have 18 negatives. And your last integer question says 2 multiplied by 10 minus 12 plus 12 divided by -2. So the first thing I'm going to do is simplify my brackets. 10 take away 12 is -2. And now I have 3 operations left. I have a multiplication, I have an addition, and I have a division. When you have multiple operations of division and multiplication, you do them in the order they appear from left to right. So -4 plus 12 divided by -2. So I do my multiplication first, not my division. It's -4 plus -6. And the sum of those two would be -10. Now we get into your fraction sense, and it says 1/2 plus 3/8 times 5. So I know I'm not going to do my addition first. I'm going to do my multiplication. And if I was to take this 3/8 multiplied by 5 over here, when you have a whole number, you need to think of 5 as being 5 over 1. Multiplying fractions means I multiply the numerators, and I multiply the denominators. It's going to be 15 over 8. And I'm going to keep that over here. It's 15 over 8. So instead of saying 1/2 plus 3/8 times 5, I'm going to say 1/2 plus 15/8. Common denominator when adding fractions, I'll use 8. And an equivalent fraction to 1/2 is 4/8. Now that you have common denominator, add your numerators and keep your denominator, which means your answer is 19/8, which is 2 3/8. Your next question, same question, except instead of multiplying by 5, you're going to divide by 5. So again, this 1/2 plus is going to go here. And 3/8 divided by 5 is the same thing as 3/8 multiplied by the reciprocal of 5. And since 5 is 5 over 1, the reciprocal is 1/5. So instead of doing division, I'm actually going to do multiplication, which means that 3/8 divided by 5 is 3/40. Now that you have that, use your equivalent fraction of 20/40 to 1/2 plus 3/40. Add your numerators and keep that denominator. Your final answer, okay, it's on video. Just watch. It's 23/40. Just pay attention as we go through this. Your next question is much simpler. 1/2 plus 3/4 times 5/8. I'm still going to do my multiplication first, which is going to give me 15 over 32. Just multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators. Common denominator of 32. Equivalent fraction to 1/2 that has a denominator of 32 is 16 over 32. Add your numerators and keep your denominator. Final answer is 31 over 32. And your last fraction question is 1 3/4 plus 1/2 divided by 2 1/4. So this 1 3/4 plus is going to be the first thing I write. And over here, I'm actually going to, so 1/2 divided by 2 1/4 is the same thing as 1/2 divided by 9/4, just an improper fraction. And I'm going to keep the first fraction, change to multiplication, and use the reciprocal of the second fraction. And therefore, when I multiply that out, I get 4/18, or in lowest terms, 2/9. And I could cross-reduce that here to see that I get 2/9. Once you have that, you're now adding fractions. Always easiest to just change the name proper. Your common denominator when you have a 4 and a 9 will be 36. This will be 63 because this is times 9 and times 9. And this will be times 4 and times 4, which is 8. And your final answer will be 71 over 36, which is equal to 1 and 35 over 36. Here we go. Next question is your algebra questions. There's 4 of them here. 2 minus x equals -8. If you're solving by opposite operations, this is actually a 2-step equation. This is a positive 2, which means I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides to get rid of my constant. And when you do so, you still have a -x equals a -10. But a -x, this is the same thing as saying a -1x equals -10. And I have to divide both sides by -1 to get x. Over here, I'm going to divide both sides by -1 to get x equals a positive 10. Next question, your constant's here, your coefficient is a -1/2 of x. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 3 to both sides. And when I do so, I get 8 equals a -1/2 of x. I'm going to multiply both sides by -2, and x will equal -16. Your constant is 4. Your coefficient is -5. Get rid of your constant first by subtracting 4 from both sides. -5x, not 5x, but -5x is equal to -6. I'm going to divide both sides by -5. And x will equal -1 and 1/5, which is -1.2. Positive, sorry. Positive. And the last algebra question uses distributive property. So we'll expand using distributive property. -2x plus 10, because a -2 times a -5 is a positive 10, equals -12. And x equals 11. So your last 4 questions, the first 2 are from your test just before Christmas vacation on linear relations. What's the equation? Well, here we have 8, and here we have 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. So in the equation, 4 is your coefficient. Substitute your first pair, which is 2 and 10. Since 8 doesn't equal 10, I need a constant of plus 2. And therefore, your equation is 4 times the x value plus 2 will always equal your y value. In your next equation, it's going down by 2. It's going up by 1. Negative 2 divided by 1 is negative 2. So in my equation, negative 2 is your coefficient. Substitute an ordered pair. 1 for your x, negative 12 for your y. Since negative 2 does not equal negative 10, I need a subtracting of 10 to balance the two sides. And that's your equation, but we're not done. It says if x is 100, what's y? So take that equation and substitute 100 for x. And you will solve that the y value is negative 210. If x is 100, y will be negative 210. And your last two questions are taken from grade 7. What is the area of a triangle? Well, your formula is base times height divided by 2, or 12 times 10 divided by 2, which will be 120 divided by 2, which makes the area 60 units squared. Perimeter is simply the addition of all sides, which will be 22 plus 16, which will be 38 units. That's your perimeter. And your last question, which is your circle, what's the area? Now we're here, we said pi is 3. That makes it a little bit easier for us to use, do the math without a calculator. So area is pi times radius, or pi r squared, if you want to use that instead. So here, we got pi multiplied by the radius. Since the diameter is 12, the radius is 6, or 18 times 6, which is 108 meters squared. Perimeter is the same thing as circumference, and circumference is pi times diameter, or pi times diameter, or 36 meters is the circumference.